Hello, my name is John Erickson. I'm the head of community over at College Confidential, and this is our admitted podcast, which is the official podcast of College Confidential. Today we have, hopefully the video portion of the podcast will work out, but I have with me Jen, oh my goodness, I just lost it, Eichberg. I'm sorry, Jen Eichberg is here. Please introduce yourself and correct my pronunciation if I got it wrong.
Yeah, no, thanks so much, John. You got it. You're spot on. Jen Eichberg. I live in Denver, Colorado. I have a 2022 grad, just finishing the freshman year. I'm also an LCSW in private practice that specializes in adolescence and mental health.
LCSW, say what does that stand for
yes.
people who don't know, like me?
Yes, so an LCSW is a licensed clinical social worker.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
So I think we'll get back to that in a minute. But first, how did you find out about College Confidential, and what was your first impression, first interaction?
Yeah, I mean, I want to say my daughter's sophomore year, it was some sort of some rumblings about it and amongst my peers on a place and a potential resource for getting more details and a little bit more of an inside scoop on some different campuses or the actual process, even essay writing, that kind of thing. So just another added resource, and to put in the mix of as we began our search process. And so it's really through parents, I guess, through other parents. Yeah.
Okay, so you're talking. I mean, that happens old. I had a parent who didn't know I worked at College Confidential say, "Hey, have you ever heard of this place called College Confidential?"
Oh,
yeah, I kind of work there.
Yeah.
So that is a popular way to get around. So what did you like? How did you actually find the experience? to live up to what you expected, or how'd it go?
Yeah, no, I think it really, my impression is it lived up to what I expected. It was everything that had sort of been outlined to me. I mean, it certainly, once you create that profile and as I started my journey as a parent, I started looking up different topics and just really kind of found my way around the site. I would say I was sort of a light to medium size, user, where, there were certain times of my daughter's process where, I would take a little bit more of a deep dive on some of the schools. One of the main things that I really enjoyed about the process is I think it allowed me to sort of compartmentalize a little bit some of my questions or some of my research. So I wasn't kind of after her so much, like, what is this? Or what have you heard about this? And have you looked into this? Like, I could just kind of go on and get some impressions. And in most circumstances, I kept a lot of that information to myself, but then I was able to sort of filter it and, ask some really more poignant things of her, right? If she would start to have a certain place that she was feeling a little bit more passionate about, I could, sneak in well, I heard this, or have you looked into that? Right. I mean, it just was a really nice balance. So I enjoyed that level of engagement with it. I will say, caveat, that one of the parents that had, told me about it was like, oh my gosh, you got to make sure you don't go over and over it, right? Like, it's pretty easy to get, have it be a source of anxiety if not used properly. So I really made sure I was monitoring that very well. So,
yeah, I mean, anytime you get people together, it can be a very healthy thing where you're like encouraging each other, or it can get into, like, I don't know, I rant with people sometimes when I get really comfortable with someone. It's like, how healthy was that for our relationship and for our mental health and all the rest? Did your daughter make an account, or has she been off, doing other things?
Yeah, no, she never made the account. She never made an account. I was just, it was just me.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then when you started using College Confidential, and then at some point she started, you maybe work together to create a list of schools.
Mhm.
Would you mind sharing some of the schools that were on that list and how you arrived at them?
Yeah, well, my daughter had a pretty, I guess, complex or interesting background in just that she had lots of different subjects
Mm,
academically that she was passionate about. So we were not the family that was doing searches for certain majors. She really started leaning more towards general liberal arts education,
okay.
and came she came from a fairly large public school environment, and really, obviously COVID was a factor for
Yeah.
everyone. So as part of our story and our journey was really her wanting a smaller environment and one that had a little bit more teacher student relationships, and just an opportunity to really get to know that. It was so chaotic for so many of her high school years that she really wanted kind of that grounding in her college experience. um, so that's kind of where she landed. Obviously, other peers, actually, the majority of her friend group too, wound up to going on to bigger
Okay.
institutions, and equally as happy, and had reasons to want to go out and really stretch and spread their wings, and wanted lots of social after being sort of on
Oh, absolutely.
lockdown,
Yeah.
wanted bigger environments and lots more going on. So I think the most important part is that, it was about listening to what each kid was really looking for. And again, this word grounding comes up
Hmm.
a lot. It comes up a lot in my work, and just in talking about all this. I think it's really important to kind of know really what you're looking for. So, and I think that, the website really helped her do that. She wound up, are you interested in specific names? Would that be
Sure.
helpful
I
to the
mean,
community?
I'm fine either way. I just wanted to
Yeah.
like give you a chance to talk through the process, and
Okay.
if you don't want to share names, that's fine. But I also think
Yeah.
like it can be fun to hear what other people thought, what
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
considered.
Yeah. No, I don't have any qualms about that. I mean, she was looking, I mean, during the application process, everything has been so up in the air.
Yeah.
But and again, with her not having lots of different academic interests, one of them was politics and political science, and she's been really involved in a constitutional law program.
Oh my
Um,
goodness. Wow. Yeah.
and so she looked at American University. She looked at Denison University, which is a nice, small, very balanced campus in Ohio. She looked at University of Puget Sound.
Hmm.
That was a bit more of a best fit sort of safety-ish category. Again, no one knows anything during this whole process.
Yes.
But she ultimately, her first choice was Pitzer College, which is one of the Claremont colleges in just outside of LA. And she decided to do an early decision application,
Oh, okay.
and was admitted at Pitzer. That's where she attends. She just got done with her first year.
Oh, congratulations. So I live in Southern California, and so we certainly know about the Claremont colleges, and it's a fun little, I mean, I don't know, maybe as an outsider it's different, but it seems like a fun little campus environment where it's not just the students from your particular school, but you get to interact with other schools if you want to, and sort of like a big university feel, or like a small school feel, but a big, I don't know how to phrase it, but
Yeah,
sounds great.
it's so unique, and really just has been an incredible first year, and everything that you would want to see your kid be able to experience. Just really is a fit. I think it is really a reflection of her being able to know herself and what she was going for, and know the community. I mean, exactly what you just said. I mean, it's really fun to see how that place works, and all of those campuses, they really do have very specific personalities.
Yeah.
But she's at Pitzer, but she took 2 classes at Claremont McKenna.
Hmm.
The second semester, loved it. There's a lot of government relations stuff going on there. There's a visiting professor at Pomona, that is like, she's done a lot of reading about. It just all over the place is just really having an amazing experience. So feel very fortunate that way.
So sounds like you would say this would be a successful college search process for her and for you, perhaps.
Yeah, I really would. Knock on something.
Yeah,
Oh, here's my lamp
that's a
behind
little
me.
bit of
I
work
can
there.
lock on
Yeah.
there. Yes.
And maybe digging in just a tiny bit more, was it it sounds like it was a collaborative thing between you and your daughter, that you worked together to help each other through the process, and you had input, and she had agency as well.
Yeah, and John, I love that word, agency. I think that is really so key for kids during this process. She drove most of the process, and really what she was after. There were some guiding questions and guiding, obviously conversations and topics. We tended to do what I think can pop up as a lot of recommendations, if for parents out there listening, right, where we tended to compartmentalize our discussions to once a week, where we'd sort of have a 15 or 20-minute conversation once a week, instead of peppering her with lots of to-do lists and things every day. And after that, that was very, very helpful. The other thing that, as she was searching and kind of came up with her top schools, and this is something with a lot of the families and kids that I work with, as she was looking, and we would go to visit, which during her search, a lot of campuses were shut down, so we didn't get a lot of in-person visits. But even after an online tour, after every school she interacted with, she would have 3 words that described that school. So social, outdoorsy, adventurous, intimate, professors, right? Like, just 3 words. One school, was disconnected, right? Like, and that was actually when we got to go on campus. She just felt like all the kids were really disconnected from one another and not saying hello.
That's a very meaningful word of like, I'm not so sure about this school then.
Yeah. So, she had 3 words. And I think, as kids and families navigate this, at the end of the whole process and really deciding, okay, where am I going to apply? Where am I going to pull the trigger and pay for the application fee? And then ultimately, obviously, if you're fortunate enough to be able to weigh different schools, of course, taking finances into account and all of that. But if you're looking at your choices, it's easier to compare 3 words to 3 words than to have long involved conversations and not feel, you can just kind of identify your alignment with those 3 words a little bit more easily. So that proved to be very helpful for her.
That is a great tip. I wish I had this conversation 6 months ago. My son is a junior transfer, and he had about three schools he was considering, and it came down to the last 2, and we wrote these long, complicated lists. And it turns out that the thing that really threw him over the edge was he visited one of the schools and just fell in love with the campus. And so, like, we probably could have saved ourselves some time by having the 3 words to compare after we had done that. So you talked about your professional involvement and the kids that you see. This is something I was thinking about Have you noticed any differences between the kids who have gone through the COVID experience and those before? Like, is that noticeable at that level, or is it kids always have problems and difficulties?
Yeah, well, I mean, we always have, some of us are able to ride waves more easily than others. And, temperament is a huge factor, and,
Hmm.
families and being open or not to the process. But in general, yes, I would say I think that kids are having a harder time navigating it. And, my observation is that it really comes down to how much are they tuned into themselves and
Mm,
really what their goals are, where they sort of, even core values, and who do they want to surround themselves with. So much energy, so much emotional energy was spent on just making it through those years.
yeah,
We have kids that are slightly developmentally arrested, right? I mean, just a little bit, more like, sophomores and juniors that are applying to college rather than, this junior, senior year, feeling ready to venture off. So, and I think that obviously kids are different. Some kids are a little bit more advanced than others in knowing the answers to these big questions. But I think in general, it has been a bigger challenge. And certainly with my clients and even peers, and now my daughter's peers, you can tell the kids that kind of made a choice and just went off without um, having that grounding before they ventured. It's just some kids are struggling more than others. So I think the
yeah,
transition and paying attention to the transition period is really more important. It is getting more and more important.
yeah. I mean, that grounding, it seems like, at least with my kids, they were suddenly cut off from a bunch of social situations and desperately wanted them, but also now I think, like, coming off of it, there's uncertainty about like, how do you talk to someone in person?
Yeah,
And fortunately, they're getting through that, but it's also like, I think it's, I mean, I don't want to speak out of turn, but it seems to me like there's going to be long ramifications for years, with kids, as depending on what age they went through it, and
yeah,
how they handled it at the time.
yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. I mean, it's hard. It's a hard journey already. And then, we've kind of stacked these,
Yeah.
more layers on top of these kids. The other thing I think that is really um, something to really pay attention or to honor is that kids are coming from lots of different backgrounds too. I mean, there are some kids that were lucky enough to be in school the whole time. I mean, depending on which state you're from, depending
Right.
on,
Even what district it is. Yeah.
yes, district, smaller independent schools, were able to stay in person. So I think as parents, we just really owe it to ourselves to just assess, where our kid is and what they had. And there's a lot of strength in pushing through the difficulty too. I've seen kids that are in really large, public school environments that have a tremendous amount of resilience and growth that came out of this. And kids that were in smaller independent schools. So I'm not saying, I think it's important to recognize, just because you are in person or a smaller school doesn't mean that you're necessarily more equipped. It's just, as parents, we need to really understand our kids' strengths and where hopefully we can step up and step in when we need to.
Yeah. So when you talk to kids, especially in the age of, the college seeking age, how does the college search process rank in terms of what's on their mind and what they're worried about, and how would you say that is, and what sort of things do you think parents can do to address that?
Yeah, I has dramatically changed in the last,
Oh,
I would
really?
say
Okay.
even 2 or 3 years. I think the family, the child anxiety that is really arising with more applications going out, so acceptance rates are plummeting, is really throwing a lot of kids into a tailspin. So a lot of my work is focusing on depersonalization. It's a
Mm.
lot of what I think the website in College Confidential has done a good job with articles about great things on other schools, and here's um, top here's some 50 schools that are not in the top 25 that are amazing
Right.
for you to take a look at, and really talking about fit. um because so many families get overly focused, as we all know, way overly focused on these top 25 schools that the same kids are applying to, and the acceptance rates are plummeting. So even if a kid is an amazing fit and sees themselves there, their just confidence has been going down, and just so unpredictable, really. I mean, having
Oh.
applying to schools that have, this is just an anecdotally, I have a friend whose daughter just went through the process and applied to a bunch of schools that had more like 35, 45, 55% acceptance rate, didn't get into those, and then got into a school with 14% acceptance
Right.
rate. And she's like, what is going on? And so it's just a lot of, one of the foundational principles I use in my practice is acceptance, and a little bit of a Buddhist lens
Hmm.
of really suffering comes from want, right? Instead of accepting what is. And if you can just be so excited for the acceptances that you did get, and just really focus on your energy on that, and not struggle and suffer so much with wanting things to be different and wanting what you didn't get,
Yeah.
we're going to be fine. These kids are going to be great and happy, and could be amazingly fulfilled at 30 different campuses, right? It's not about just that one place.
Yeah.
So the other thing I will say I really recommend for parents to do is to have a financial discussion.
Yes.
I don't know if you're talking to any other families about this, but I have really found um, that parents are not talking about the financial piece. Money can be a very
Mm.
touchy subject for a lot of people, but these kids, they need to know kind of what's reasonable and what they're working with, and um, you know seeking resources, scholarship money, but to not let your kids fall in love and have dream school that they got into, and then not be able to support them, financially or emotionally. Honestly, some parents will, some kids will fall in love and go for a school, and then parents are like, nope, we're not going to have you go there. It can be crushing.
Yeah, definitely. I can see that. And that financial discussion is, I've talked to a few parents who have had it, and that's great, but there's also like, um, it seems to me like when you raise your kids, like you don't want them to feel like they're deprived in any way, and you want to make them feel like you're generous, and you can afford to do what they want, and you're giving and all that sort of thing. And I think those are good instincts, but like you said, it may be, for some people it may be impossible to send your son or daughter across the country to an expensive private school, and have you had that conversation about what you're going to be able to contribute, and how much they're going to have to um, contribute, and if it's even possible in some cases.
Yeah.
um yeah, for sure. So it sounds to me like a lot of the stress is coming from, at least maybe some of the newer stress is coming from low acceptance rates. So if you have I've talked to so many kids who've sent 20, 30 applications, and the reason is because they're afraid that they won't get into, like they have to increase their odds of getting into some school, right? Because you only need one.
Yeah.
And then the result is everybody is getting more applications than they have in the past. And so like it lowers the odds of any individual person getting in, which is a harsh reality.
Yeah.
Let me think. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about, either with your personal process or with the children you've been talking to, the students you've been talking to professionally?
I think it's really about coming back to that word that you mentioned that I really appreciate. It's just agency, right? I think giving kids their, that control over their process. Of course, as parents, we're going to be involved, and we're going to have really strong opinions, but giving that process to your child, with guidance too, right? I mean, again, with the 20-minute, meetings, and trying to compartmentalize the stress, to make sure they're getting their recs in on time, and do they have that essay, and do they have all the supplements that are, that need to be happening, that you're there as a support and a guide, and you've got the guardrails up, but really within that space, that you've got to let your kid go, kind of all over within that space. And because they're not going to be happy if they wind up at a school that they think is just to please you, or if they are not slowing down enough during their own process to know themselves and where are they really going to be most content.
Yeah.
And then also the only other thing I would add is, to not be afraid to do, like, it's not the getting in that is important. It's that, to not be afraid to do the prep on the leaving too, right? It's about, are there some lessons that you've learned in high school? What are some warning signs of a, friend group? And how are you going to pay attention and kind of veer away as you're meeting all these new people? What are agreements that you're going to make with yourself on, going to office hours and signing up for clubs? What's it going to be like when you come home on break, and going from leaving your stuff all over the place in your dorm room to readjusting and having to put your dishes in the dishwasher? I mean, the amount of conversations I'm having with parents and kids, when they come back into town. So to really understand that this is, a whole process. It's not just done once you get the acceptance. And I know most families are in that mindset. I mean, everyone, knows that it's a huge transition, but I think that there could be some more reflection that happens, that would help the kids, again, sort of ride those waves a little bit more smoothly once they launch.
Yeah, for sure. You remind me of one of the things I've thought about a lot, which is the parents may pick the school, but the parents aren't going to be taking the classes. They're not going to be going on campus. They're not going to be doing the activities. And so as much as we think, oh, I know what's best for my son or daughter, which I do. I absolutely know what's best for them.
Yes, of course.
But they need to make their own mistakes or find their own way. And sometimes they might surprise us and actually find something that we didn't know that they had in them. And this can be a very good surprise. Great. Well, I've enjoyed this conversation. We could probably go on another 3 or 4 hours on some of these topics. But I was wondering if you wanted to share how people could get a hold of you or find out more about your work and about who you are.
Yeah, no. So I'm again, an LCSW, a clinical social worker in private practice, and I have a therapy practice, but I also have a transition program for 8th grade moving to high school. and seniors moving to college for, to address these very topics that we've just covered. Because it's my passion. I've always, my entire career has been on teenagers. I do have some younger kids, but probably 80% of my practice, and I just love it. I mean, the teenage brain is changing the same, if not more now than it did the first 18 months of life. And I think to help guide those changes, and to, it's just been a privilege of mine to be on the sidelines, and hopefully one of those voices that can help kids be the best selves, which is an important phrase too. It's not their perfect selves, right? No one is perfect.
No,
it's just,
afraid not.
How could I be the best version of myself that I can be? So it's great fun. I mean, and that's the message to parents. And I do a lot of family work too. It's just to try to enjoy this. And I know it's obviously such a literal process and can be so stressful, but try to approach it with really open mindset and enjoy the journey of it too.
Excellent. Well, thank you for having this conversation with me, and hopefully we'll be able to talk again in the future, and see you later.
Great. Thanks for having me on. Nice talking to you.